and beyond. Meet 981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Nancy, Smoke House. It's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach Lee. Conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 Coach La La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the business, oh, she the business. You can tap in, oh, get the business. To empower you, so that you can do every and anything that you want to. You can hear it, Coach It's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La.
What's going on? What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Shout out to Miss Angelina Hightower. She gave me that way of saying my name. So I decided I kind of like that. So you are listening to the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. That's right. We are radio with a purpose. We are broadcasting live from Hyde Park, Massachusetts. And you probably know this because I tell you every week that I'm excited about every single conversation, but I'm super excited about this one. And so it has been an interesting week for me, but I've decided that Sundays, I just relax and sort of like allow myself to reflect. I don't know how many other people out there during this time of year when it's daylight savings time and it gets dark earlier, you just sort of need more time to self-reflect and disconnect from people. So I am chilling. I'm relaxing. So the only thing I really do on Sundays is come do this show. So that's how important it is to me that I get out my house, come all the way here. I ain't been dressed all day. I've been in pajamas and I went and put a little bit of something on through my red lip. I really like red lips. I love me some red lips, y'all. Anybody that knows me, get me a red lippy, you make my day. So you guys know what we do here on Conversations with Coach La. We talk to really interesting, dope, intriguing people who have done something that I would consider constitutes them betting on themselves. And I feel like they can inspire and motivate people. Some people have asked me, Coach, how do you do a show on Sunday evenings at 10 p.m. and why Sunday at 10 p.m.? Well, I figured by this time for y'all insomniacs and all you people that strolling the internet that you would be relaxed, able to sit back, drink your favorite beverage, tea, hopefully no coffee so you can actually go to bed, get you some tea, some chamomile tea, maybe a glass of wine, and just sit back and listen to some things that might actually spark some perspective, encourage you, motivate you, or you get some tips on how to, make your week more effective and more productive. So that was the idea, hopefully you guys will share this, tell people about it so we can have more people join the conversation live because you can listen and watch us live on the Urban Heat website. So go ahead and check us out on Facebook. Go to Urban Heat Media and you can follow the page and actually watch the show if you didn't know that. You can also watch on all streaming platforms as well, Instagram, LinkedIn. So shout out to everybody on YouTube and all of the places that people love to be at. I tried to make sure I'm everywhere. So now that I got that covered, that's my housekeeping all done. What are we talking about tonight? Well, body work. For all y'all nasty folks, I ain't talking about that type of body work. Even though the conversation that me and this next guest was having offline was quite juicy. Don't think because we get up there in age, people, that we don't still, like to go have some fun, because a lot of us are still out here getting it on and getting it in. But we ain't talking about that type of body work. we're talking about yoga. We're talking about being able to do breath work, restorative yoga, which I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, and how sensitive yoga informed programs actually can help people with trauma and understanding their body. There's a great book that talks about the body knows the score. So a lot of times we don't realize that when we've gone through something traumatic, like it lives inside of our body. People who have a lot of anxiety and different things like that, a lot of times it's connected to some type of traumatic experience. So she does a lot of things to help you deal with that. So she is a licensed independent clinical social worker. So she's my sister. We both are sister in this field. She's a registered yoga teacher. She has trained and helped several groups of people, individuals, and organizations amplify their authenticity and empowered them to become a better version of themselves, both personally and professionally. She has years of research in restorative yoga, where she has done yoga in terms of a 12-step recovery. I'm like, okay, that's very interesting to me. Miss Ayanna Freeman has developed an approach to wellness that gives people an opportunity to release complex trauma out of the body using movement and holistic and mindful techniques, making her a highly sought after speaker for events, retreats, and conferences. Not to mention, she's also an author of not one, but 2 books, Becoming Free, which is a memoir that talks about her journey from addiction to recovery. And in her second book, which I can't really say on the air, but let's just say it's called Unf You're Stuck. Okay. It's the 12 agreements to full body freedom, where she helps others identify stress cues located in their bodies, where she can fully release them using her 12 principle techniques that she founded. So she's super dope. She is a contributor to the social justice movement that has over 3,000 members. And she's also the founder of Love and Revolution, an action-based anti-racist social media group serving Cape Cod and beyond. So without further ado, I'd like to bring my next guest, Miss Ayanna Freeman, to Conversations with Coach Lau. So let's give her a nice warm welcome. What's going on, girl?
Hi. So fun.
How you?
So fun.
What's going on?
I'm
good
so
to have
happy to be here. I'm so happy to see your face.
I know. So what's so great about being able to connect with you is that we met at the Redefining Strong Black Women conference by Miss Regina, the Mindful Nisa.
Yes.
I was there as a moderator, and I had a table, and you were there as a workshop presenter. And I sat in your workshop, and I was just so intrigued and impressed by all that you do. And also the title of your book was very attractive to me. So we've been working on trying to connect for a while.
Yeah.
And I am going to be a part of the urban escape that we're doing in the Cape with the Urban Heat. So you guys better go get tickets and book your suites. So you saw that on my Facebook, and you were like, I'm in the Cape. We've been trying to connect.
Yeah.
Meet up for me to come and connect with you in the Cape for a while.
Yeah.
So now you're going to be a part of my brunch.
I'm so excited.
So I'm doing the Boss Up brunch, which is the Bet on Self brunch, which will be a part of the Urban Heats retreat that we're doing in the Cape from the 29th to 30th and the 31st. So that Monday, Ayanna, along with Robbie DeBarros, will be joining me to do a Boss Up retreat, which will be designed to help you connect your mind, body, spirit to your goals and how you want to manifest a 2025 that will be all about you betting on yourself. So you know you need to be there, right?
I love it.
So
I love it.
that being said, I was like, you know what? You need to come on my show.
I know. It was like the timing's great.
She said, no problem. I am there. So
Yeah.
I said a lot of things about what you do, but that's only like a third of you, maybe even less than a third of who you are and what you're about. So tell the listeners, in your own words, what's not on this paper? Who is Ayanna Freeman?
Oh my gosh. What's not on the paper?
And let me correct myself. Ayanna Freedom. I'm saying Freeman, but it's Freedom.
Yes, freedom, like, free, it's
Yes.
free. Yeah,
I got to make sure I correct myself. So
that's all good.
who is Ayanna?
So I'd say aside from all that, my core being is super silly and full of joy. Yeah, that's the simplest way I can say it. I'm really full of joy.
She gonna get real concise. This is biopsychosocial. This is not a case study. You can give me a little bit more than that. She's like, yeah. There's a lot more. I didn't even tell them about you being a dog. You're a mom.
Oh, I am a dog mom.
You're a dog mom.
I love my dog.
You got you got a lot of things that you do. How did you come to get into the work that you're doing? And talk to me about this journey from recovery to healing that you've done and that you've been on.
Yeah, so I can give you like the real full story. The end of it is like, now I'm just full of joy. So I just like to say that because like, that's kind of what encapsulates the freedom piece. So yeah. So it started, let's see. So I'll be 8 years sober December 5th. So this is kind of cool that we're doing this today.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So for years and years, I was like miserable. I was like the most unhappy person on the face of the planet. And it was just related to trauma that happened to me years and years ago from when I was like a kid. And it's all in my book. But the moment that I finally figured out that I had to let go of the thing that I was holding on to, which was alcohol, which was, wine in particular, but then other stuff, sort of captivated me and was like, it felt like the only thing that could really make me feel better about, and I was functional for a long time, right? I'm a social worker. I was healing other people, like what? Right. Mind blown there, right? Helping other people while I was a full-on addict at the same time. And then it just became super unmanageable. And so I made a choice to get sober and then get free. And then I say freedom because really what I did was choose to live a life that was myself. And I wasn't myself for probably, 25 years. I kind of lived like that. Sometimes I managed it, sometimes I didn't. But it kind of led to then this whole life of I started a nonprofit and I taught other people how to do it. And I did it in a way where it wasn't like your typical like AA or NA or any of those ways of sort of getting free from an addiction. I tried that. It didn't work for me. And then I realized that for me, really, it was breath and connecting to my body. And then I felt free. It wasn't until then that I made that connection. And that's when I sort of like took off with yoga and all the somatic movement and figuring out that all the emotions and trauma actually lives in your body, not in your head, not in your brain, even though it feels like it's in your head and your brain. It's really in your hips. It's in your heart. It's in, the parts of your body that ache all the time. That's why they call it dis-ease. It's actually dis-ease in the body, not necessarily just the mind. I mean, the mind's the piece of it, but yeah. So then I wrote like 2 books about it. So here I am with you.
I love that she's very concise and to the point. Like it's just simple with her, right? Like it's, I just decided one day that, I was just doing the most and I just stopped and, I learned all these great things and now I'm here. It's just that simple, guys, but it is really not, right? And so as you're saying that, and I'm thinking about how many people find themselves in the midst of an addiction and they didn't even realize they were addicted.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, it sneaks up on you because for the most part, you feel like you're very much in control. Right.
Yeah.
I remember I mentioned to someone that drinking, smoking weed, sex, shopping were coping strategies often. And she said, what do you mean coping strategies? What are coping? I never even thought about that. I said, well, when you think about why and what do you get out of what you do? And this is where your work comes in and bringing your mind and your body and connecting to understand what do you get out of drinking the drink?
Right.
I remember the first time I had a drink, it was gross. I didn't even like it, right? I had beer. I didn't like it. And these are things that we try and they'll say things like, it's an acquired taste. You'll like it or you just keep trying. It'll get better. Made me think about something else anyway.
Oh boy, here we go.
TMI. Can't tell you. Some of these things that I think in my head, I have to keep to myself. I have to realize I don't want you guys to know all of these things about
Oh
me.
my gosh.
But I think about when we are engaging in things that help us feel better, we don't necessarily recognize that we're in pain.
Right.
We don't understand the emotions that are associated with some of the behaviors that we do is because we want to feel better.
Right. Exactly.
It's interesting that you said that you feel freer now, because
Yeah.
if you think about addiction, after a while, you don't feel free. You feel like you are in
Oh,
prison. And it's like that idea of like there's a monkey on your back, that
mhm.
concept, like there's something constantly edging at you saying, hi,
I
hello,
know.
we want to go get high. Hi, hello. When are you going to get the drink? Hello. It's been a little bit, like we need that. And then it actually shows up in your body. There's some people who literally start to have the withdrawal symptoms, right?
Oh yeah.
The first sign is that you don't even realize that if you don't have the drink, you get a headache. Or if you don't go have the drug, your body, you feel sick, right? And so then your mind tells you we need that so that our body feels better.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that that's precisely what has made you sick is that drug.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
how your body is trying to expel it.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about the moment that you said I could manage it, but then sometimes I couldn't. For those that are listening, that are trying to really put the 2 and 2 together, what is that realization and that self-awareness like for somebody who might be listening that's going through the same thing, but maybe even says, I don't have a problem. I got this.
Right. Exactly.
Because that's usually what we say, guys.
I know. Well, what's funny is, so
stop at any time.
What'd you say?
I can stop at any time.
Oh, right. Exactly. Like people think they have control over it, and sometimes they do, but it's when that thought comes in, like, can I? It's already too late. So like people got to realize that if that's a thought process that's been in your body's been trying to let whatever that is go for a really long time. By the time it gets to your brain, it's like, ooh, this is a problem. If you're like wondering, right? Because that wondering is just going to go on for years until you're like, then something happens, and then you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And for like me, right. So like for me, it was alcohol, but it could be coffee, it could be cigarettes, it could be porn, it could be your phone, right? So right now we're in like a climate that is like hustle culture, full of racial trauma, full of war, full of politics that are harmful to particularly marginalized communities. So no wonder it's probably very likely that most of us are engaging in some type of addictive behavior. Like, not to make it seem bad to anybody, but like, there has to be some point where the body's like, I can't do this anymore, right? Like your brain's so overloaded. If you're not engaging in healthy stuff, you're going to engage in not healthy stuff just to like survive. Like like my therapist would always say, like, when you were in active addiction, like literally it was the only way that you survived, because the pain that was underneath it was so great that you literally thought your body was convinced you were going to die if you didn't have alcohol. So like for me, that was the moment where I was like, oh my God, I understand that. And then, the denial for 1 year of when I could like manage it. I say manage it because I really couldn't, right? There was nights where like I was out where like I was just the drunkest person in the room. Like it was just like, and it was like obnoxious. And sometimes that was funny. And then sometimes it was like really scary. So, there's like those moments where like, the next day when I'm like, ooh, that was a really scary one, then the thoughts are like, ooh, something's wrong. I got to do something about this. But at that point, the scary moments had already happened that I had just ignored, right? So it's like when I started to be able to be like, not ignore it anymore and start to take a look at it. But that took a very, very long time. Like people told me for years, there's a problem here. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like you drink with me. What do you mean? Like, we're all hanging out together, and we, in my mind, we drink as much as we, no.
Yeah, you drink as much as I drink.
Right.
And I have to say, like in college, anyone who's listening, I can throw them back. I can't do what I used to do. Like,
Right.
I do not have the stamina to do that. But I also feel like that you know those statements where they say, you know, a drunk tongue is an honest tongue,
Yeah.
and it usually enhances or brings out your alter ego. Like,
Yes, totally.
whoever you are when you're drinking is more than likely who you really want to be.
Oh, geez.
I'm already a hoot without drinking, so usually it just takes me to 1,000. But I really like what you said about being able to take that minute to step back and go, huh, it's too late when you're starting to already have that feeling that maybe I'm doing the most, because that means in the moment you didn't have control.
Right.
Or if you can't remember, you know, done, right? Like those things are signs.
Yeah.
And usually by then you're already in your potential
You're
addiction.
in it. You're in
but
it.
I love that you said we all have some level of addiction.
Yeah, we do.
Or some people are gonna be like, what is she talking about?
I know they're gonna be all mad, like, stop it, Freedom.
Yeah, I'm not addicted to nothing, but I think that there's some truth to that. One of the big ones is sugar.
Oh, sugar for me, for sure.
Like sugar is a big one. Salt. I think, you know, normalizing that it's very easy to have something that you crave, you want, and then you feel like you can't. Chocolate. You feel like you can't do without it. If you do, you're like literally irritable.
Yes.
You know, that's a big one is sugar. Like when you try to put yourself off of sugar, there's literally somatic symptoms that go along with it, which makes it hard to stop.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So tell us about this part of like being able to you realize it, you acknowledge it, and you have to make a decision. So that reminds me of the whole stages of change, right? The pre-contemplation, then you're contemplating it, and then you finally decide. How long did it take to actually make the decision? Because usually you think about it and you're going to go through some relapsing.
Yeah.
Just because you say today you want to stop, it usually doesn't happen immediately.
No, yeah. I can tell you the story that it happened. Just trigger warning. It's a hard story. So just to say that.
Trigger warning.
It's a hard story to hear, but it's not long, but
take a minute and walk away or pause it or get a hug. I'm giving you a virtual one.
Or be here, but just use your breath as you breathe through while I talk. That'll always help.
You want to show them what to do? What should they do?
Yeah, so they should drop their shoulders and then lengthen their spine. And then take a deep breath into the nose and then let it out through the mouth. Yeah. And then do that. So take a deep breath in, inhale. Fill up the chest or the belly and then let the exhale out of the mouth. Yeah.
Okay, guys. So if you feel any kind of way, try that.
You can shake your shoulders. I always do like this.
Do you know, like breath is a sign of life.
Ooh,
and a lot of people hold their stress and don't even realize you hold your breath. When you're stressed, you're anxious, you get frustrated, you hold your breath. That's why they always tell people who are having panic attacks or anxiety to breathe. So you'd be surprised. For all of you that just did that, doesn't that feel so much better now?
So much better. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a story. I'm ready now.
So my addiction had progressed. So it was getting worse where I was like drinking like all the time. Like I wasn't really eating. I was just drinking and I was hiding it. And it was really, at that point, my body was chemically dependent. So it's like, I couldn't survive without alcohol. The body does get to a point where like, it will go into withdrawals. And if you don't get help to get yourself weaned off it, you can have a seizure and die. That is something that does happen. So I was at that point, my body was at that point. And I had been drinking and we had just adopted my daughter and, I was going to go pick her up from preschool and I had been drinking and I was like, I'm about to get in the car and I'm about to pick up my 3-year-old and this isn't okay. So I called my husband at the time and I said, if you don't come and pick me up and take me to rehab this second, I will never get sober. Like we have a window, we have this one window. And so he did. And that was like the hardest, most bravest thing I've ever done, probably in my whole entire life. And I was so scared. Like I was shaking to the point of like, I almost ran out the door. It took him like 10 minutes to get home. He probably drove really fast. It was 20 minutes from work. But it was, but I got in the car and yeah. And then I stayed sober for 6 months after that and then relapsed. And so I always tell people like, that's totally normal. Isn't, it doesn't happen to everybody. But in the beginning, if you've been drinking for that long or you're addicted to something for that long, the body doesn't know how to navigate the world without it. And so it feels yucky. It doesn't necessarily feel amazing in the beginning. It felt better, but I wasn't happy. Like I hadn't found something that made me happy yet. I found like movement and dance and exercise, but it wasn't that. And that's sort of when I found yoga. And so I started to do yoga teacher training. But I think because I was so into the yoga teacher training and it triggered some stuff, no fault to the teacher training, it was just my own stuff. I relapsed and ended up back in detox and rehab. But what happened was I was just thinking about this the other day. It was like, as awful as that moment was, it was like the happiest time of my life. It was like, it was 8 years ago. And it was, I spent Christmas and New Year's in rehab. And I remember being so just happy because I was so dysfunctional prior to that I shouldn't have been alive. Like there was really scary moments where like, I probably should not be here right now. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like I made it to detox. I was like crying, happy, like, oh my God, like I didn't die in my car. Like, oh my God. Like, so, and then I think that was the moment that I really dove into yoga and I started writing then. That's when I started writing my first book. And that's where I really just found the yoga mat and I just like rolled around for like hours and listened to music and cried and wrote and really started to dig deep into some of that stuff and then started to work with therapists and read and just like really get like deep into the stuff while I was in rehab because like why not be a mess there, right? Like I can go as deep into the trauma as I wanted because I was safe. Right. I've never been in a place where like I could go that's what needed to happen is like all the stuff that happened to me when I was younger with all the trauma that happened with my mom. It's like I needed to just be there, but it was so scary and so painful that I felt like I couldn't do that without alcohol. But finally I like had this moment where I was like in rehab on a yoga mat and then was like talking to a therapist like, no, this is what came up in my yoga mat. Let's walk through it together and like let's heal it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank God for that moment of reaching out for help and saying, you know what, I need to get out of my own way.
Right.
And noticing that because so many people, I'm sure if they could do it over, have those second thoughts about their behavior, but they don't listen to themselves. Exactly. Right? Just get behind the wheel anyway, or somebody tries to take their keys and so I'm thankful that you made that choice and you were supposed to be here to be able to talk to us and to whoever's listening that may be experiencing moments like that to know it's okay and that the best thing to do is to reach out for help because the hindsight of that is getting behind the wheel and getting into an accident, harming someone else or yourself.
Exactly.
Versus not driving that car and being able to just sit there. I prefer you just, sit on the side of the road or go get on a bench before you get behind the wheel.
Right.
So many people have found themselves indulging in alcohol. It's one of the most, I would say, I don't want to say popular, but I would say it's one of the most approved, socialized, normalized.
Oh yeah.
Means of managing, coping with stress. Like, the idea is, you get off work, hey, let's go have a cocktail.
Let's go have a drink. Right.
It's just so normal to say that you can find yourself with an alcohol problem and you didn't even know that you had one. You just go out. You're going out every night and time you go out, somebody's buying you a drink, and it can happen and you don't even realize it.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I work with clients on is understanding what they get out of it. And a lot of people don't realize that part of being able to move forward from something is to understand how you act, what it does for you that you actually like.
Right.
The things about it that you enjoy, because that's often what makes you go back and need it. Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, it becomes a habit. A habit becomes potentially could be something that's addictive, but there's something out of it. So you replaced it with yoga.
I did.
Yeah. And you were already a therapist too, which I want to circle back quickly to that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's some people out there that don't believe in therapy and they say, you know, therapists, you know, got their stuff and we're out here helping other people. How are you helping other people and you were in this self-destructive behavior? Like, have you thought about that? And if you tell me if I'm triggering you, but I'm sure some listeners are like, wait a minute, didn't she just say she was a therapist? And how? Yeah. But do you know that therapists, teachers, most like public officials, helping professions, a lot of times have addictions.
Oh, totally.
I think often because you got to practice self-care. But anyways, back to you. How did that happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a social worker for years and years and years, mainly working with kids in schools. But I think what happens with people that have stuff, right, that has trauma, that have addictions, that have all that kind of stuff, we can be really good at helping other people, right? So I could separate it, even though it probably wasn't smart. Like I had this amazing ability to separate it. And I had this amazing ability to use what I was being dysfunctional with by helping other people through that. So it was almost like a mirror of myself, right? And like analyzing and then shifting and changing what I couldn't do. But it like was magic for other people. Like, how did you know? Oh my God, you're like the greatest therapist. And in my head, I'm like, I'm just doing what I can't do. I'm telling you what I can't do myself. I didn't say that out loud, right? But, you know, it's in holding space. I think for being a therapist, really, as you probably know, is that because I had so much empathy for what people were going through, because I knew it, I had been there, I had felt it, I could really hold a container. Like therapy and being a social worker is really listening, right? So if I had the ability to do that and to hold that kind of emotion for a short period of time, I was like the best therapist ever. But then what would happen is I would take that on. I didn't even know that I was would take it on. I would not know how to work with all the emotions. It would land in my body. And I wouldn't know how to I wouldn't necessarily just go to the gym. I would just go to the bar. And I would think about how horrible that person's trauma was. Like, what? Right? Like, wait, what?
So for all those people out here, once upon a time, you know, I had heard this thought process about a therapist having a therapist. And that, you know, well, how can you help people if you have your own therapist? This is one of the reasons I strongly recommend all helping professionals have a therapist, because if everybody is making sure that their cup is full and that they have a place to process, right? It's an act of self-care. You will have less of, what do I do with all of the things that I just heard today? How do I unpack it? Especially when you get to the level that me and Ayanna are at, we don't have like a supervisor anymore, right? Like we are at the highest level we can be, so we can supervise ourselves, run our own practices. So if we don't create like professional networks to sort of support us in the work that we're doing, where does it go? Where do we put it? And so self-care is so important for anybody that's helping professionals, parents, caregivers. You gotta have some place to release that stuff off of you. Be you work out, be you go to therapy, be you have a coach, have some activities, yoga, writing. You need these things. So it's interesting that those became your replacements.
Right. Yeah.
Which speaks to what we tell the clients to do, is to have a good self-care plan.
I know.
Duh. Like,
Right, duh, right? Duh.
develop an addiction. But Christy, thank you so much for your comment. And shout out to Wonder. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you, Vela Ray. I see you out there, girl. Thank you, everyone on Facebook, Instagram, all of those places, LinkedIn. You are listening to Conversations with Coach La 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 right here on the Urban Heat, 98.1 FM. I'm here every Sunday at 10 p.m. live. And tonight we have Miss Ayanna Freedom live with me in the studio talking about her book. So tell me about your first book that you wrote, which was Becoming Free.
Yeah.
It was a memoir. So I'm thinking that the things we're learning right now live is on your book.
Yes. So that story that I talked about of almost getting my daughter out of preschool, that's definitely in the book. And the book was sort of inspired by all those moments like on the yoga mat when I was in rehab. So when I was in rehab, I would just have journals and just write about like the trauma that happened to me. So the story that comes up the most is the time when I was younger. So my mom was an addict as well. And she was, drugs, alcohol. It wasn't just alcohol. It was like multiple things. And she was homeless for a long time. There wasn't many moments in her life where she was sober from anything. And so there was a time where I was living with my dad in Newton, and then she would call and just be like, hey, I'm going to meet you on the train and we're going to go shopping. Right. So meet me at, in Newton and the train station and we'll go shopping. And I was probably like, I don't know, 7, 8, maybe 9. And I would go and just wait, and it would be freezing, and I would walk and I wouldn't tell anyone where I was going because I knew in my heart like she wasn't going to show up, and she didn't for like, and I kept going. I mean, that must have happened. I mean, multiple times, the train station. And so sort of that's how like the book opens of like, this is how I learned that at that point, what it taught me was I was unlovable. Of course I was, right? Of course my mom loved me. She was just wrapped up in addiction. But at the time, I was like, when you're young and your mom doesn't show up and it's like she's, choosing drugs or whatever over me, I was, learned that like, this is what it feels like to be unlovable. I must be unlovable. And I remember in the book, like that was actually the moment the addiction came in. Right. So if you look back, like I didn't know this until I pieced it all together, way later and then in the book. But that moment of being like, I'm unlovable in this world, like and later on tasting alcohol and being like, that makes me feel like love. Boom. Right. Like that was like, what? So the book kind of walks you through all, sort of the back and forth moments of how my childhood trauma sort of contributed to the addiction, and then how I sort of came out of it on the yoga mat, and then how I started a nonprofit, and then the world that you see now today. Yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. And thank you for sharing that, Ayanna. I think we talk a lot about doing the work, and I think sometimes we use a lot of themes become really like popular and they become part of pop culture, and it's a lot of like, you need to heal, right? You need to do the work, and
right.
What the hell does that mean?
Right. Like, what does it mean?
When do I know I'm healed, right? Because as we're talking about this stuff now, like you still have emotions and feelings about things.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of your story. It's part of your journey. So when do you per se become healed? What does healing look like? And I think that looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
There's also this part of our work where we talk about not re-traumatizing people. It's very solution focused. So focus on the solution and not the problem. And so for a lot of people, it's like, well, is it helpful to relive these memories? Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really up to the client.
Right.
But I think there's some things that play out in your mind like a loop.
Yep.
And they come up for you. And a lot of times we don't even want to acknowledge that these things are coming up for us, and it's like a loop. And I think the reason why I love therapy, and I think therapy is something everybody should do, is that more than likely there are certain things that have happened in your life. Maybe not in childhood. Maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it was something in college. Maybe it was, a breakup that sort of can reshape us, change our perspective and outlook about the world and ourselves and our interconnectedness to the world.
Yeah, totally.
It can cause pain, right? Hurt, despair, resentment, all of those icky words that, we sometimes don't want to address. And I feel like that's why for me, growing up in the crack epidemic, right? I saw a lot of people change overnight. I remember being a young girl and people that were one way all of a sudden were addicted. And not everybody that tried, crack back then, I would say was dealing with trauma. I think it was just popular. It was cool. A lot of times it was peer pressure where you were. And it was just times were different. Right. And then you find out that you have a problem. But originally you were just having fun and you just wanted to fit in and, getting high was cool. Who doesn't, do a line or two here and there. Right. And, try this. This is the new thing, the new way to do it. And you're not even thinking. And a lot of people that I spoke to weren't really thinking about addiction the way we think about it now. Like it was like people were just experimenting with this stuff and didn't see how bad it was. But now we know, like this generation, we're like, oh, I remember the crackheads. I remember.
So true.
Right. And I'm like, oh yeah. So I see addiction as scary, but back then they didn't. It was fun. It was cool.
Oh yeah.
It was just different. And I think that's somewhat what happens with alcohol is a lot of us don't look at it as bad.
Right, exactly.
It potentially could be a problem. It's cool. Who doesn't want to go out and have a cocktail? Right? They make it real pretty. They're in sexy glasses and all this stuff. Like, it's not a problem. But then again, for some people, it really, really is. So I appreciate you sharing that and just being able to understand why you drink and connecting that to when and potentially if it becomes that you're abusing alcohol. So we're not just talking about moderation, you have a glass of wine here and there, but when you are indulging to the point that you're about to get behind the wheel and drive intoxicated and you don't even notice or you're hiding it from people. There's these telltale signs that go, wait a minute, pause, pause. Am I okay? Right. Am I okay? Are you okay? So, and it's okay to not be okay. So, absolutely. All right. So after becoming free, you then did the next book.
Yeah.
Talk to me about book number 2.
Book number 2. Okay. So unbleep your stock.
Unbleep your stock. Okay.
So, that one was really fun. So the first one, people always ask me a question like, how did you get to write a book? The first one was such a long process and the second one was super quick. So it just all depends on like who you're working with and the editors and all that. So I had a sort of like a coach and a publisher that helped me with the second book. And so it was much faster. And I think what people were looking for was like, okay, so we have the first book of like your whole story, how you got to like becoming free, how you got let alcohol out of your body, how you got into yoga, how you got into movement and all this kind of stuff. But like people wanted more, like when you talk about healing, like you said, like, wait, what does that look like? Like, okay, you're on your mat, but like, I need like a framework. Like people were asking for like, we're such structured beings. And it was like, I need like a step-by-step process of how to do this. So I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So I was like, can I go back and like create, how did I do that? Right. I don't know. Right. Some of it was just natural. So when I thought about like ways in which I did that, I kind of was like, well, there was some like steps, right? So if you think about like the 12 steps was like AA or NA, there are reasons that is there. And I'm not like saying those things don't work. I think the reason why those things work is they're built in community. And there is a structure of these 12 steps that like are great, but those what was written in there didn't work for me because my healing was so related to my body and like my energy body and how I like was feeling the world. And I needed like more more commitments around my body. Like, how am I going to make commitments to my body that I'm going to live in this life? So I developed what was called the 12 body agreements. And so each one of those has a step. It's mine, but in the book, it walks you through how to create your own template and how to come up with your own 12 body agreements, or you could just use mine, right? So mine are pretty simple. The first one is, I agree to listen to my body. But when I made those agreements, it was literally like a contract that I was using for my life. And so then, I read them every day. Some of the ones that I'm stuck on, I got to go in the mirror and like literally talk to myself, because some of them, it's hard, right? Like, I'm going through menopause. I don't love my body right now. It's like so much bigger than it's been. And so, part of what I made a commitment to is that I will treat my body like my best friend, like my friend Nicole says. And it's, if I'm not doing that, I stop on that one. And I'm like, okay, this is the work. This is the work for this week, this month, until I feel like I'm grounded in that body agreement. And, there's 12, it can go, but they're fluid. They're not, nothing in this world is not fluid. So you can go from 1 to 12. It doesn't have to be, one way or the other. And so the book just kind of talks about the stories of how I got to each agreement. And so that's,
I really like that. I like that. Shout out to the body agreements. I think anyone who has ever had anything happen to their body, any kind of body violation, this is a great book to reconnect you to your body. A lot of people disassociate from their body when they've gone through certain traumas, be those sexual traumas, be those physical, be those not feeling like you were loved, abandonment issues, rejection. And sometimes to get through those things, you separate. And when I say separate, it's like an out-of-body experience. When you start saying things like, I don't care, it doesn't matter. You start saying different things that let you know that you're not really acknowledging the impact. Your words will never hurt me type of thing. We kind of get conditioned to numb ourselves from what's really happening around us so that we can cope. Right. And so that we can move forward. I think for me being a Black woman, that has been very much a part of my experience is, you got to be strong. We ain't got no time to be crying.
Oh my God.
That's a sign of weakness to cry or to say you need help. So there's this hyper focus on strength and independence, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think all of that sometimes means that I have to separate from my body, because if I'm in my body and I start feeling, might make me cry. I may not have the strength to stand and to keep going and moving. I might just feel like I'm going to fall apart. So I think a lot of times we have to just keep going. And that keeping going is not even noticing that we're in pain. I know that there's some women have mentioned when you said, you feel it in your hips and your shoulders. If you've ever went and got a massage, raise your hand, right? And you go get this massage and you have no idea all of the little nooks and crannies that are in pain until they start rubbing you. And then you're like, wait a minute, hold up, wait a minute, but at the same time, it feels so good. The pain, it's like, it feels good, but it hurts. And it's like, I need to be rubbed there, but I also want you to stop rubbing there because it's uncomfortable. So I think a lot of times with therapy, it's all about pressure, how much you take, and you almost have to be able to have your safe words that we could be hitting pressure points, which are your triggers, that you're not really ready to completely have massaged out yet. Right. And so I love that you do breath work, body work, which is some of the things we'll be talking about at the brunch.
Yes.
On Monday.
I'm so excited.
December 30th. We're going to be doing some breath work. We're going to do some somatic movements. So you guys get ready for this. Get your tickets on your seat. I'm excited. I'm going to be ready to do some of this work too. Yeah. So this is one of those moments where I want to, we talked about the question I normally ask, which is, what does therapy mean to you? And you sort of already tied that in. Is there anything else that you would want to add to the significance and importance of therapy for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think like being a therapist, as far as like holding space for people, I think what's really important, especially for therapists out there, if you are a white-bodied person, there is a very different way of holding space for people of color. And if you haven't done the work around white privilege or anti-racism, I don't want to be as blunt as like you shouldn't put yourself in front of a person of color, but like you really shouldn't. So, I mean, I'm finding now that
she said,
I know, I'm like, we're like in a time in the world where like people of color can't be harmed more than they're already being harmed. So
Right.
if you're going to hold space for somebody, please do the work. Like, just please, like, get your white privilege out of the way enough to be able to have deep conversations about racial trauma.
Right. And understanding that I think the big thing is acknowledging that it exists and not light the client to not think that it exists.
Right. Like as if your issues are other than that.
It exists.
Sometimes.
It exists, people. Privilege exists. And I think that's the biggest one for me. When I was in social work school, we did a couple of like privilege walks and different things like that to show it.
Mm-hmm.
So your bet on self moments.
Oh, yes.
So, part of my trauma and also healing and all of that was really around my relationship with my dad and my daddy wombing, which shout out to my dad. I miss him so very much because he made space for me to talk about those things with him. And he took accountability. He didn't gaslight me. He was so transparent about his weaknesses and he apologized.
Oh, nice.
For not being present and not knowing what he didn't know and understanding how that could have impacted me and letting me know how awesome and beautiful I was. Oh, my dad. Ooh, such a great. No, by no means was he perfect, but he gave me that gift before he passed away. And another gift he gave me was to always bet on myself. No matter what, to believe in me and to understand my gifts and what I was bringing to the world, and that if I always held true to that, I would be okay. So that became my mantra when he passed away, is like, you know what your daddy told you?
Right.
Yourself. This is one of those hard moments. You're going to have to dig deep and just bet on yourself. You'll never fail if you bet on you. Always bet on you. Right. And so I just started saying that and bringing it into the world. And next thing you know, it became a mantra. I made it into my coaching program. And now I've brought it into it's the reason why I started doing this show. So bet on self moments are those moments where you have to dig deep and say to yourself, if not now, then when? If not me, then who? And despite what I've seen, what I've been told, I get to decide who I am, who I want to be, and where I am going. And I take control of me as of right now, today. The buck stops with me. I don't have to continue perpetuating the dysfunction, the drama, the trauma that I have learned from lived experience, my parents or whatever, wherever it came from. Do you have self moments that you feel like you haven't shared already that maybe were quiet, that you want to share with the listeners to give them a little bit of encouragement that they too can bet on self?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that come to mind are the ones I've sort of touched on, but I want to elaborate a little bit, because I think that even though my story is around addiction, it really has to do with choosing loving yourself. And that, like, there's going to be a moment in your life where you're going to be like, I'm going to go this way and I'm going to go down this hole. And that's kind of going to be like, I'm going to fight against it, or I'm going to choose love. And yeah, life's going to go like this, but you can always come back to a foundation of love. So it's like, can we really be in? And so I think the moment that I called my husband that day and was like, I need to go to rehab, I chose love. Like, I chose myself. And then the moment when I went back and then started writing and then let my breath just heal my body was another moment I chose love. And so, like, can we just continue to choose love as much as possible? And then those moments sort of just start to evolve and kind of build on each other, and then you just grow. And I think I didn't answer your question of are you healed? The answer is no, but we can evolve in a way in which we just keep growing and building so that we're still ourselves and we're still bodies of love. So like the goal really is to walk around the world like a body of love. I don't know where that came from, but there you go.
Oh, it sounds so sexy though. I am love. I am love. Love is always in me. Right? If you start to think about it like that, then you always have it.
Right.
I think that's a beautiful thing to realize, that self-love is about loving all of your parts, even the ones that are messy, the ones that are not kind.
Right.
You know, those dark spaces, is that you got to love up on that stuff. And I think that's often where addiction lives, is in your self-doubt. It lives in your imposter syndrome.
Right.
It lives in the things you don't want to address because it's a mask. You think about it, drinking, drugs, indulging in sex, shopping, anything that you abuse often is a mask of something you don't really want to deal with. It helps you suppress it and not deal with it, because you don't want to be in pain. You don't want to be in disease, right?
Right.
You know, when you start to put those two and two things together, I think it helps you to find healing. Now, you said you're not healed.
Yeah, no one's ever
if
healed.
You're not healed, then what would healing look like? What would healing look like?
It's sort of just like an ever evolving, growing of you. It's almost just like a flower that just continues to bloom, right? And then you get quiet and you go internal, and then you just keep blossoming.
So maybe it's like restoring.
Yeah.
Restorative yoga, but I think maybe it's about shedding. You know, like they say, after 7 years we shed. You know, but maybe the idea of healing, because then that would mean that you never feel it, you never get triggered by it.
Right, exactly. Or like your growth is over.
Like it never existed. And I think if that's what you think healing is, then no, then you're never really healed, because you don't forget.
Right.
Right. Like I think about the grieving process. Like people think it's like a point you arrive.
Right.
And you don't. It just changes.
Yeah.
You will always miss your loved one. You will think about them. And the more you try to not do that, I think is when it becomes problematic.
Right.
But being able to coexist with the fact that they're not physically here anymore. But the grieving never stops.
Right.
It just changes.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Changes.
And that's sort of how we sorry.
No, go ahead.
How we in terms of healing, how we talk about it in yoga is like you're just shifting shapes. You're just creating different shapes to build on one another. And
I like
so
that.
then, you just change, everyone as a therapist now, when people are like, this thing happened to me, it was so crazy and awful, and I made this bad decision. I'm like, no, you're just shifting shapes. You're going over here now, and it's okay. And let's think about how we want to go there. That's all.
So look at healing as being fluid, people.
Yes, so fluid.
It's like breathing, right? And you got to continue to breathe through it and continue to process it. It's not linear. It's not this place you arrive at. It's a process of acceptance, radical acceptance, I like to say, which means I accept that happened to me, and I also accept that I am not in that space anymore, because things do change.
Oh yeah.
I am no longer 14, no matter how much I want to otherwise, right?
Right.
Time has left, which means that the situation that happened at 14 is gone. The girl that happened to has turned into this 48-year-old woman, right? She's already survived it. So the question is what am I going to do at 48 to let her know, okay, boo, you took care of me.
That's right.
You got me here.
Yeah.
So now I need to do the additional work to keep moving forward. Oh my goodness. Can you believe this?
I know.
Literally.
I was like, I could talk to you for like 10 more hours.
Out to everybody who's been tuned in. I love y'all. Give me some hearts. Share this live. If you've been feeling what we talking about, put some comments in there. I feel like when you quiet like this, y'all, that's because we got y'all. Y'all are like deep in thought with us. I know you are. I can see you. The numbers show you there. So I know sometimes people just need a minute to take my conversations. I know conversations with Coach La is just deep. So sometimes you don't want nobody to know.
Talked about a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, they don't want everybody to know they're there. Oh, hold on.
Expect the unexpected. Yo, from Boston and beyond. Meet 981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Y'all know what that means, right? That means I have to say goodnight. You got to get off this live, but you don't have to go nowhere, but hopefully to bed. So thank you. Ayanna, thank you. We're going to talk.
Thanks for having me. It was so fun. I can't wait to
Yes.
see you December 30th.
Listen, December 30th, make sure y'all get those tickets. Go to the Urban Heat website, grab your ticket, get your suite. We are selling out, baby. But I expect to see all your beautiful faces in person. Remember to share this live, comment, like it, and make sure you're back here next week for another conversation with Coach La. And y'all know what to do. Keep betting on self. See y'all later.
Bye.